Now then, how are you doing? I hope you're well. You know, with summer just around the corner, this seems like as good a time as any to talk to you about trees. There are many different ways of painting trees, of course, and what I'd like to explore with you today is a way of thinking about trees both positively and negatively. I'll show you what I mean. Trees in full summer foliage generally means green. So it may surprise you to know that I'm not going to start with green at all. Instead, I'm going to start by establishing a copse of trees somewhere in the distance using a light, weak French ultramarine. Viewed like this, trees become large, solid-looking shapes. Place a bunch of them together and they become an even larger solid looking shape. So how do we know they're trees? Well, the key is to rough them up around the edges and to vary their height so as to reinforce the notion that they are in their multitude. Other than that, I'm painting the whole shape using a single colour and a single tone. In other words, I'm keeping things simple. Watercolour is a transparent medium, and as such, one of the ways in which it works best is when scenes are built up in layers, effectively exploiting that very transparency. I've added cadmium yellow to the French ultramarine to produce an earthy green. It's not the best combination of the colours to manufacture green from, but on this occasion I want to maintain a certain harmony with the initial layer. The minute I add the new, slightly richer colour, the first layer appears to recede further into the background. This is exactly as I planned it. Trees en masse can be quite daunting, so one way to deal with them is to enhance the illusion of depth as much as possible. Variation is also something we should be looking out for. One way to vary the trees and make them a little more visually interesting is to create some light-toned tree trunks and branches by painting around them negatively. Well, I hope you agree with me that even with just that single negatively painted tree trunk, it makes the new layer of trees start to look more interesting. In other words, we should try not to think of our trees only as positive shapes. The best scenario, in my opinion, is a healthy combination of the two. In watercolour, we work from light to dark. So I'm adding a little more French ultramarine and cadmium yellow to the mix, and altering it slightly by adding some burnt umber. Once again, I'm going to add a further layer of trees and negatively create more tree trunks and branches by painting around them. Negative painting can be tricky and takes practice to get things looking decent. If you're new to watercolour and don't feel confident enough to produce negative shapes without any sort of guide, then of course lightly pre-drawing them out in pencil would be perfectly acceptable. Doing it without any pre-drawing is a bit of a party trick, but there are no awards for it. It's the result that counts. How many layers you want to build up depends upon several factors. Each layer adds complexity, and maintaining continuity with the existing trees becomes a greater challenge. You may also find yourself running out of space. I think just this one more layer ought to do it. Just in case you're wondering, I'm not planning on painting in the sky. It would be easy enough to do so, but on this occasion I want to keep it all as simple and uncluttered as possible. And I rather like the early morning misty minimalism that it creates. I am going to bung in a foreground though. For this, I've mixed up a light green from Cadmium Yellow and Prussian Blue. I don't want to do anything to detract from the trees, so a simple field will suffice. To help give it some depth, I'm adding a French ultramarine shadow in the foreground while it's still damp. And to reinforce the illusion of depth and space even further, what better way than to add a farm track to lead the eye into the scene towards the trees. Well, I hope you enjoyed that short demonstration and found it helpful. We spend most of our time thinking of trees in terms of positive shapes, but they become far more interesting if you can manage to throw in a few negative ones to balance things up. Until next time, take care.